is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I agree Morgan would be an amazing guest host. She's always one of my favorites.
Oh my god, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
She's coming to the wedding.
I should freaking hope so.
Yeah.
She's in Portland.
There's a couple of people who got invited, a couple of Wheel of Time folks that I've become pretty close with. It's crazy to me that like all of my good friends at this point started out as people I met through the Wheel of Time community, through like cons, or mostly through this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the podcast really was the gateway to all the things.
That like, yeah, I can't imagine what my life would be right now if I hadn't started this podcast. Like I just
there's a reason that I got the Nodding Raven tattooed onto my body. It's because I was like, well, that's a watershed moment in my life. There's before and after I met the fandom via this podcast, and like it was so funny. I got a Wheel of Time tattoo, and then like within a year, found the podcast, and my very first time I reached out to you and Patrick was because I wanted to share that I had my tattoo. Because you guys were talking about tattoos, episode 10 or whatever. And I was like, well, I want to tell them about my tattoo that I got last year. Like, it was wild. And then, that one SpoilerCon, it was like a bunch of people got tattoos. And so then I got half of the tattoo. I still want the other Raven. I still need to get the other Raven. I'm still going to do that eventually, someday. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just like Wheel of Time has impacted me so much that I might as well get a tattoo of it. And then that was part of helping me lead into this community and skill set that has been watershed also in a similar way. So that's why there's a tattoo for the fandom. Like it is of this podcast, but it is for the entirety of my experience with meeting people and having friends in a community and like all of that, like it started here. Right.
So
it's the Nodding
and this is definitely the door. And that's the thing is like, yeah, the podcast is a door into a community, but the community existed, before the Watt spoilers started. I think we just sectioned off the best part of it.
Well, and I mean, I think we helped start the part that we're part of.
Right.
Like, because there wasn't a lot of content creators, and now there's a fuck ton of content creators.
Right.
And we are on friendly to acquaintance terms with at least half of them at this point. Like, there's so many more that we've never met, but like we know a lot of them at least slightly. And like they're all great, and they all started after this podcast did.
And the number of the creators who've said, yeah, we listened to what Watt Spoilers was doing and said, yeah, we can do that, or we can do something like that.
Right.
And like, and then the people who we haven't met, a lot of them were inspired by people who we inspired, even if they haven't heard us directly. Right. So I do feel like there's a certain amount of Watt Spoilers DNA in a big chunk of the Wheel of Time content creator community.
Right. And so we get a little bit of like founder effect slightly, know? Like people are like casting themselves in the light that Watt Spoilers set up. And like, I have had such a great social experience by joining with people who enjoy this content or content that is similar / inspired by this content. Like those are the greatest people. They are pre-selected to be way more likely to be awesome. As the Lights Work says, statistically the best.
No one has asked me in a long time, how do you feel about these content creators coming in and like competing with you? Because it's like, that's not what ever happened, right? It was just never. Ever. Like we all just wanted more content, right? Like
it's been a really like, it keeps building on itself. It's a very happy snowball. And certainly people like Matt Hatch have done a huge amount of heavy lifting when it comes to like corralling large amounts of fans and like, I mean, man, the whole YouTube universe is just on a whole other level. But again, a lot of them post-date the initiation of Watt Spoilers. And like they've done such amazing work to grow the connection between, like you said, these people have always existed. We've always existed. And
let's not hesitate to give credit to the people who did Dragon Mount, who do Encyclopedia Watt, who do all the various websites and forums that existed, in the 90s. Yeah. I mean, Theoryland, I mean, wow. Like there's, even the Tarvalin Facebook webpage, right? Like some of those communities existed decades before we came along.
Absolutely. But there was a lack of the connection on a grand scale, that it feels like
the internet didn't exist on that scale, right? You had to be tuned into these very specific forums and be on the internet in a way that very few people were, and also a fan of Wheel of Time, which again, despite being a huge community, is still a relatively small group of people.
Oh my God, yeah.
Percent of the population. Yeah, and then JordanCon. I mean, JordanCon didn't, I always forget this, but JordanCon didn't start until after Robert Jordan died. Right? Like, there wasn't even a community that came together on a regular basis until much, much later.
Right, yeah.
In the timeline of which these books were coming out.
Yeah, so, like, people discovering how many of us there are is, like, still a wave that is cresting, right? It's like been this process of like people making the content in these tiny pockets, and then those tiny pockets getting a little bigger. And then, yeah, the internet kind of matured enough that like these stupid content creators with no fucking shame at all just started blaring their opinions into the void. Like anyone gave a shit. And like suddenly everyone was connected. We're like, hey, we've all been interacting in these different pockets. I know you kinda. What was your handle? Holy shit, we all know each other, and we're developing not just like JordanCon becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger thing, but like WotCon is totally succeeding where SpoilerCon was never going to succeed. Like it keeps growing.
And yet at the same time, I very recently talked to a coworker who is discovering the community exists for the first time. He's like, I wish I'd known this had been out there for the past, 2 decades.
Yeah, as I said, it's still cresting. This process is still actively exploding. It's beautiful to witness. Competition would be so bad for that. Like, no, we need more visibility, and that happens from us all, like, actively pumping each other's shit up, rather than seeing it as a competition. Like, there's so many lost souls out there that have yet to discover how big the community is.
Speaking of seeing everything as a competition against your equals in order to bring them down, in order to be in a bliss, we should talk about this chapter.
We totally should. That was an excellent segue.
Thank you. I'm trying to look out for opportunities to segue when I feel like, and just sort of bring it into the content. But yeah, so we are at the Gardens this week, which is, almost basically as iconic as Darkfriend Social, right? This is all the remaining Forsaken having their Forsaken social, chosen social, whatever you want to call it.
We literally end the chapter with little holograms of the targets floating around being like, these are the targets. It is very much an echo of the Darkfriend Social.
Right. And it's freaking hilarious that this is the chapter in which he shows the other Forsaken the targets, when in back in book 2 he showed Dark Friends the targets.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, we got to talk about that more when we get to it.
It's weird.
There's a lot to talk about in this chapter, right? It is a short chapter, but there's not a lot of sentences that don't need to be dug into or given context. Short
and juicy. This chapter is so many highlights. Might as well just have highlighted the whole damn chapter.
We are going to squeeze some juice out of this chapter.
Because it's dark friendery, which is always fun, and it's being in an unusual POV, which is always fun. Like, Robert Jordan really had a lot of fun writing this chapter, and we're going to be here for a minute.
Yeah, these are the exact kind of chapters that, like, I feel like we've been missing from the slog, right? Like, these just, what the fuck, so much is, we get so many answers in this chapter. And some of them that we've been referring to many, many, many times, so.
Yes, this is a heavily referenced chapter in terms of this overall podcast. This chapter's been used a lot. And I have no idea where to stop the read in, like, it says good.
I was going to ask you, should you read it or should I?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, you probably should. And I still don't know where you should stop in that case, because Robert Jordan, why you gotta be so on fire, dude?
I think I'll stop with, he must consider this meeting more important than most.
Okay.
That's a fairly long read. All right.
You gotta get your sexy lady on.
Should I do like a sexy throaty lady voice? Is that
I
what
don't
we're going
know.
for?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. Let's give something a try. Aginor arrived and answered Mordin's summons, spoken into her furious dreams, to find him not yet there. That was hardly surprising. He liked to make an entrance. 11 tall armchairs, carved and gilded, sat in a circle in the middle of the striped wooden floor, but they were empty. Semirhage, all in black as usual, looked around to see who had entered, then returned to a huddled conversation with Demandred and Masana in one corner of the room. Demandred's hook-nosed face carried an expression of anger that only made him more striking. Not enough to attract her, of course. He was far too dangerous for that. That well-fitted coat of bronze silk with falls of snowy lace at neck and wrists suited him, however. Masana also wore the style of this age, a darker patterned embroidered bronze. She appeared wan and subdued for some reason, almost as if she had taken ill. Well, that was possible. This age had a number of nasty diseases, and it seemed unlikely even she would trust Semirhage for healing. Grendel, the only other human presence, stood in the corner opposite, cradling a delicate crystal goblet filled with dark wine, but watching the trio rather than drinking. Only idiots ignored being studied by Grendel, yet the three went on with their fierce murmurs. So, all right, I have to read the comments. How bad is this?
We're having fun.
Okay.
So southern. It's just so southern. It's amazing.
The chairs jarred with the rest of the surroundings. The room appeared to have view walls, though the stone arch of a doorway destroyed the illusion. The chairs could have been anything here in Aran'gar, so why not something to suit the room, and why 11, when that was surely two more than needed? Asmodean and Samael must be dead as Bilal and Ravine. Why not the usual dilating door of a view room? The display made the floor seem to be surrounded by the Annalise Gardens, with the Cormolande Maroon... Sorry about this. Cormolande Massoon's immense sculptures of stylized humans and animals towering over low buildings themselves, like delicate sculptures in spin glass. At the gardens, only the finest wines had been served, the finest dishes, and it almost always had been possible to impress a beautiful woman with the large winnings at the Shinjay wheels, though cheating enough to win consistently had been difficult. Difficult but necessary for a scholar who lacked wealth. All gone in ruins by the third year of the war. A golden-haired, ever-smiling Zamara in flowing white blouse and tight breeches bowed fluidly and offered Aran'gar a crystal goblet of wine on a silver tray. Graceful and beautifully androgynous, apparently human despite those dead black eyes, the creatures had been one of Aginor's less inspired creations. Still, even in their own age, when Mordin had been called Ishamael, there was no longer any doubt in her mind of who he was. He had trusted the creatures above any human servant, despite the uselessness for every other task. Somewhere he must have found a stasis box stuffed with the things. He had dozens, although he seldom brought them out. Yet 10 more stood waiting, graceful while standing still. He must consider this meeting more important than most. All right, that's it. I'm done.
So that is your Sean Chan voice from now on, FYI.
Wait, why the Sean Chan voice? That's Aran'gar.
Because it was so southern. It was just so southern.
Well, I mean,
southern boy. Oh, you want a veranda?
I did live in Mississippi for 3 years, Texas for 3 years.
It came out.
I grew up in the South, Virginia. Yeah, no, it's not that hard for me to switch into it. Although I'm sure it's contaminated with all sorts of other accents.
I mean, it slid around all over the place. I don't have an ear for these things, but I could tell. But like it's so funny because so many people do variations on a Southern drawl for Seanchan that it was like I kept hearing it as Seanchan, even though I know it was Aran'gar.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
This is how Lord Torak would talk, you know?
Sure, yeah. I can go with that. Maybe she's I don't know. Who knows?
But that was amazing. Thank you so much. Gus from Wheel Takes is really going to have a run for his money with his professional career now. There's the part of me really wants to try getting into voicing books again. I feel like I've gotten a lot better over the years with the readings and voices and stuff like that. I'm much more confident than I was. Give me... All right. Okay. I do have a book that it's a professional book that I want to try and narrate because there is no narrated version of it. Dude, let's do it.
It's like... So, but obviously we have no permission from the author or anything like that, but I kind of want to like do a version of it and then send it to her and be like, look... Because she's still alive, she's around, but the book was written in like the late 80s, early 90s type version. And so like I don't think it's ever gotten picked up by anybody to do the audiobook of it. And it's one of those books that I read when I was a kid, and it's like, it's almost a romance, but it's also got like dragons and phoenixes and shit and stuff in it. So it's like enough of a fantasy that I enjoyed it, right? I was like, I want to listen to an audiobook of this childhood book I used to really enjoy. It's a fantasy. And it wasn't there. And I was like, oh man, I should really do it. It was called, I think The Last Dragon Lord. That was the name. Joni Bertrand. So I'll drop that link. So I did at one point download the book of that, and I was like, oh, this would be a fun, because it's also got a male-female dichotomy, right? So I thought this would be fun for you and me to do, because it's like two characters. He's this last dragon lord, right? All dragon lords have their soul split. They're waiting for their soulmate to come around. And, but it's been so long. He's waited hundreds and hundreds of years, and he's afraid that he'll never have his soulmate. And then along comes this mortal girl, who, of course, turns out to be his soulmate, right? And you're telling from his perspective and her and his perspective. But, of course, then there's bad guys who are trying to keep them separated and use the power and the transformation and all that kind of stuff for themselves. Sure. So.
That's very cool cover art.
And it has shape-shifting dragons. So he's, of course, handsome man during the day, big old threatening dragon, whatever he wants to be. Yeah.
That makes sense. Standard issue dragon.
And, I'm into the age gap stories these days. So, what can I say?
Another plug for Queen of Dreams by Kit Rocha. That's literally the plot.
All right. I read that whole thing. Do we want to talk about it? The chapter. I'm trying to get us back into the chapter.
Do we want? All right. All right. I thought we were talking business all of a sudden, but sure, we can actually do our jobs.
Oh, I mean, we can talk business. We can. All right, fine. All right.
Okay, getting back on topic. This is another exposition dump in the sense that we're being reminded who's who of the Forsaken and who's dead of the Forsaken.
Sure. Should I just go down the list of Forsaken that I wrote out? Okay. Dead. Just from the top. Aginor / Aran'gar, right? He got fireballed by Olivia and he's not coming back.
Correct.
He was killed the first time at Eye of the World by pulling too much of the power and, playing tug-of-war with Rand and losing.
Yeah.
Asmodean, dead. Probably bale-fired by Grendel. Not sure about the bale-fire. Certainly killed by him, and the Dark One's not resurrecting him, so he's a traitor. Balal, bale-fired by Moraine.
Badass.
Ravine, bale-fired by Rand.
While set on fire by Nynaeve, mind you.
Nynaeve / Moghedien.
Sure, fine, whatever. Samael,
taken out in Shadow Logoth by Mashadar.
Sure, yeah, annoying, but true.
All right, resurrected. Shamael, taken out by Rand at the end of the third book, but resurrected as Moradin. He's here. Belthamel, taken out by the Green Man, resurrected as Aran'gar. That's our narrator. Lanfear, taken out by Moraine / killed by Moradin when captured by the Finns, resurrected as Sindane.
Yeah.
Right? Don't get technical with me, you know the whole story.
Yeah, well, Moraine was the naive of that situation. She set up the conditions by which the actual death was able to occur.
Exactly. And then still alive, Demandred, Semirog, Messana, Grendel, and Moghedien.
Yeah.
So I count 5 alive, 3 resurrected. So that's 8. And yet we have 11 chairs.
That's a difference of 3.
Yes. She doesn't know that Aran'gar is dead.
Okay.
He just died in the battle.
Right. That was the cleansing. That was very recent.
So that's the cleansing. That was very recent. So that's why she thinks, oh, that's 2 more than needed, because there's, as by her count, 9.
Yeah.
So who are the 2 chairs?
Who are the 2 chairs? She counts out Asmodean and Samael and Belal and Ravin.
Right. Asmodean and Samael and Belal and Ravin must be dead. So those are the 4 that she counts as dead. That leaves 9 left.
Aran'gar she has as a maybe, but she doesn't really think through the whole list. She gets distracted by Grendel.
Right. So that's a question. I did some research. I couldn't find any answer to the 11 chairs.
I like Keith's comment. It should be Tame and Alviarin. This
I
should
agree.
be the moment when Moradin says, I'm adding to our number because there aren't enough of us, and here's 1 each for each side. This is when that should happen.
Right.
That's what those chairs should be.
1 for each gender.
Robert, what are we doing here? What else could you be using these for? Why is it not that?
I mean, I think Taim might certainly be one of them. Do we know exactly when he becomes Forsaken? When he's gifted as the Forsaken?
No? Question mark. I expect that it's either recently happened or it's going to happen soon. I don't think it's really far away from this point in time, but I'm not sure that we ever get a definitive answer over when that happens. Because on the one hand, he's doing secret stuff off to the side. On the other hand, doing that secret stuff off to the side is what earns him a place as Forsaken. So, like, I don't know. Yeah, within 3 books of now. Sure. Yeah, Sam and Nasai, I agree. That should be when Shaidar Huron marks her. That should be when Shaidar Huron marks Alviarin. That should be the beginning of her being chosen, because she was chosen, literally.
Right, she was chosen by Shaidar Huron. That's what that meant. That's basically what I consider her chosen at that point, right? Like
Yes. It never occurred to me while I was reading it on my own, but like through this community, I am firmly of the opinion that that's what should be happening, and there's just a shadow version of this book in another universe that is being written correctly.
So yeah, I'm going to assume that like either that basically the 2 missing ones should be Alviarin and I'm headcanoning this. Alviarin and Taim. And the third one is basically he doesn't know that somebody's dead. Probably Aran'gar.
Right. Because, yeah, it was very, very hilarious stuff. So.
And recent,
yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, Masana has been punished for not showing up, right? We get to talk about how she looks all PTSD'd out from that. And so it's a little bit ago, but not that long.
Samael might be the only one because someone's been being Samael.
Right,
so maybe he left a chair open for him.
Who it is. And I mean, he died in the most inglorious off-screen, like it's not even funny how boring it is kind of way. Eaten by Mashadar while Rand wasn't looking. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, it's so dumb.
It really is. It's one of the reasons I consider Book 7 one of the weaker books of its era, right? Like
because the boss battle isn't.
The boss battle is just, wait, what? Oh, you're dead. You slipped and fell. Like it literally has that like, and then the bad guy slipped and fell and hit his head and died. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I took him into a dangerous area. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't like push him or call out or distract him or do anything. He just got eaten because
yeah.
Like, it's like it's really one of the weaker finishes to one of Robert Jordan's books, and so it's why I consider Book 7 like almost the beginning of the slog, right? Like that whole
it's a
build
hint.
Up. Yeah,
it's a foreshadow.
Yeah. But at the same time, like it has one of my favorite scenes, which is the crossing of the streams, right? That's the whole thing that leads to Rand being reborn and a lot of his symptoms going forward. Like it's such a foundational moment for Rand and his powers going forward that I really like his moment in Shadow Logoth. You know, It just would have been nice if, like, maybe he saw Samael get hit by Shadow Logos and he bale-fired in the same way he bale-fired the maiden.
Leah.
Leah.
Yeah. You know what would have been cool is if Leah broke cover to kill Samael for him and then got hit with the balefire and then he, like, couldn't, or then got hit with Mashadar and then he couldn't balefire her because it would, like, undo the Samael thing, or he does balefire her and then he has to actually fight Samael. Like, this could have gone so many cool ways.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
That would have been really cool.
Totally.
If Samael's dead and then
Right.
not dead all of a sudden because Rand balefires Leah for her own sanity because of Mashadar, and then he undoes her work like a fucking asshole because that's who he fucking is to the maidens.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
And then she's dead and her sacrifice means nothing and he has to live with that.
And then he barely survives like a knockout, drag down fight with Samael while Mashadar is just like cheering on the sidelines. Like, this could have been really cool. But instead, we got what would turn out to be a foreshadowing of the slug.
Well, you know, Robert Jordan really liked to nail down his foreshadowing, and he wanted you to know what was coming. He wanted to make sure that you had an idea that the pacing was just going to slow way down, right? Like, the foreshadowing was there. We saw it. If we'd been paying attention, we would have known.
But, you know, to return to this chapter, I think it really makes sense that Samael is that third chair. It should be Taim, Alviarin, and Samael, because those are three people that are ostensibly movers and shakers within the remaining Forsaken / new Forsaken.
Yeah, within that read, there's also Masana, you mentioned, appeared wan and subdued because she was raped by Shadar Haran, probably repeatedly.
Yeah, one would assume.
And she's still suffering from that. We talked about that when it happened, and it sucks. This is where we got confirmation that Moradin and Ishmael were the same person, right? This is that, like, like on the page, Moradin and Ishmael are the same person, right? Like, it was definitely suspected before, but, you know, every once in a while, Robert Jordan likes to be like, yeah, you were right about that. Like, if you hadn't picked up on it by now, if you don't know it by now, like, you'll never figure it out. So here you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The description of Zomara is fun. Just like these creepy androgynous mind-reading servant things. You kind of get a slight hint of Shan-Chan from them, the way they just like are like these beautiful, comely creatures that just stand on the sidewall and just like obey the slightest twitch of your finger. Like, it's kind of like Shan-Chan were replicating that without knowing it.
They were like, they just pretend they have Zomara.
Exactly.
They're like, okay, we're going to use social standing to impose the rules to make you think you don't see anything, when I'm sure they do. How much do you think the Shan-Chan servants talk? Like, when the doors are actually closed?
I mean, not enough to start any revolutions, aside from the constant rebellions we hear about. But, I don't know. They get socially conditioned really hard, but it is hard to say how much that truly carries over even into their private lives. Like, we know with the, you know, Damani, there's, some extra conditioning, but, like, you know, with normal people that aren't on magical leashes, they're just being beaten into compliance. Like Amathera, for example, people like her, like, I don't know. Cause, like, it's not like you can curry favor by passing around gossip. It's like, you aren't a person, you're furniture, right? It's like in Kyrian, where, like, servants are a lower class of people, but they're still people, and you can get meaningful information out of them, you know?
Yes, but people love gossip everywhere, and people get bored, and people talk about other people.
Right. But I'm just thinking, like, they might have more freedom to actually live their own lives a little bit, because no Shan-Chan nobility would ever give a shit what they think. But yeah, I mean, they're basically expected to be mind readers, like Zomara. You know, tiny little finger twitch, and you're supposed to be there with the this and the that. You're supposed to forget everything you see, and it's, yeah. If the Shan-Chan could have Zomara, they would in a heartbeat. If they could turn people into Zomara in a heartbeat, they would.
They would.
They wouldn't question applying this to Damani. If they had a Terran you could just, like, stamp someone's brain and lobotomize them into being this, they would pick that up without a second thought.
Definitely.
Because they're the worst.
Fortunately, they are created creatures, so they're not people turned into Zomara. They are creatures that were created.
Sure, they are constructs.
Yeah, they're constructs in the same way that, well, not necessarily in the same way that the Green Man is, but it related
more like
to
the Golem, really, just with the different software loaded in.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I believe all of Aginor's creations are loosely based around the Green Man and the construct, right? They're constructs, right?
Sure.
Right. The Green Man is just a construct of a plant that he constructed into the shape of a human, and borrowed, basically the soul of a human and put into a plant, right? And that created something that was good and friendly and helpful, right? And then taking that same thing and corrupting it and mixing humans' souls with animal souls, right? Because animals sort of have more of a soul than a plant does. So at that point, you're like creating this weird, bad, evil hybrid. Is sort of that's how I think about it, right? Is like the animal souls crossed with the human souls created the Trollocs, and that was bad. And he used the true power to do it, which is why you occasionally get Murdral.
Right. So then there are human souls in the Zomara and Golem then?
That's a tough. I don't think so, because I don't think they're a cross of human.
Yeah, they're just weird echoes of humans. They aren't crosses of humans with anything. They're anthropomorphic dolls, kind of. Right.
They're created out of something else given human form.
Right. They really are Golem in like the real world definition of a golem. Like a creature made of clay and brought to life through arcane means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like he found a way to strip the souls out of the constructs and just create the constructs themselves.
And then just boot them up with some basic programming and set them loose on the world.
From the dark power, right? Like that's the whole point of having the true power.
Yeah. Yeah, one would assume that the one power can't do this. This is a true power only sort of maneuver.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Zomara's always they did confuse me as to exactly where they came from. I mean, they could just be people with the soul completely stripped out of them, right? And then like imprinted with like some compulsion.
I don't think so. I think they're like the Golem. I just like not made out of like I bet they don't have bones, Like, I bet they're just solid whatever it is they're made of all the way through,
Right. Basically, when they're in the stasis box, you pull a plug out of their heel, they deflate, you fold them up, and put them away in the stasis box when they're not in use. Right. Like, yeah, they're very, very not human. They're just a human-shaped, magical shape moving thing.
Moving forward, we get the whole Grendel thing initiated.
Yeah, where she tries to flirt with Grendel, and Grendel's just like rolling her eyes at her, just like, okay, nice try at the flirting, like.
But then deciding to go along with it for strategic purposes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, totally. Just playing Aginor the whole time, Aran'gar.
It's very, it's uncomfortable in a very correct way.
Sure.
Like you are in the head of a nasty pervert who has no charm, and it feels gross. And if it doesn't feel gross, then like I don't know, it just it feels gross in a really correct way. I'm like, thank you, Robert, for like making an effort to really put the dirt in the carpet of the grunginess of this set.
I'd like to point out that all but one of the rings that Grendel is wearing is adorned with gems, and we know that plain gold ring is her Angreal. She's one of the only Forsaken with an Angreal. Again, why none of them have gotten Forest Angreal, I don't fucking know. Nasana, what are you doing?
I know! She's in the fucking tower! Like, what are you doing? It's annoying. But yeah, it's really funny, though, how much she's in the, like, competition for/with Grendel, right? Because she's, Robert Jordan's, unskillful handling of the concept of gender identity and your physical appearance and all of that. He's not doing a great job here, but he's doing it. There is an attempt being made to blend the trying to seduce with trying to compete, because he sees women as being kind of competitive when it comes to their appearances. And he's like, well, the body, influences the mind. And so you're going to become more like a woman, which means you're going to become really comparative and competitive. And that also is an interesting way to look at Grendel, looking at her through the eyes of someone who's competing with her for how low cut and slit up of a dress can be worn, right? This is like, well, she has better legs than Grendel. And it's like, that is a really interesting way to look at all of that through this character's eyes. Certainly not something that I think is representative of femininity at all, or how these things work, but an attempt is being made, and it's very internally consistent with how Robert Jordan looks at men and women. So there's that.
There is that. There's a line here I wanted to talk about where she could not find Egwene's dreams without the girl right beside her. You incompetent piece of junk.
She's so bad.
Which, okay, but first of all, that's not how the world of dreams works, right? Like, location, like, the dreams are never related to where you are. I guess she has to reach out and touch her, and maybe touch helps.
I'm guessing that it's one of those how you think it works influences how it works for you kind of things. It's like a block, basically. It's like the idea that men can't hold a shield if they can't see the woman they're shielding. Like, Aran'gar has decided that this is how it works for whatever reason. And so that is how it works. She can't do it any other way. She has to believe that she's next to Egwene in order to be able to identify Egwene's dreams. And it's just like, the world of dreams is what you make of it. Have you not learned this, you quote-unquote scholar?
Yeah, but it explains a lot of why she wanted to sleep in Egwene's rooms and, like, sort of her behavior back when she was trying to manipulate Egwene, I guess. I know we get a little more clarification on that as they start to argue, as she argues with Masana.
Yeah, it's she's so wrong about so much. So wrong about so much.
But she's the only one who understands primitive culture. She needs to rule.
Oh my, yeah, I was going to point out that line. She herself was the only one of them suited to rule in this age. The only one who understood primitive cultures. I am like, okay, I just take your 20th century British Empire attitude and just stuff it. Yeah, she's despicable. I hate her. It's great. She also points out that she had found a pair of stasis boxes filled with the most appalling rubbish for the most part. I really want to know what Aran'gar thinks is appalling rubbish that our heroes would think is an incredible score. But we don't get to know.
Right, yeah. It's just, she's like, I've got junk. Maybe it was actual junk. It could just be like banners and shit like that. Like,
just art and books and tax records and property deeds. And like, it's like just someone's like firebox or whatever. And it's like, this is all for a world that's completely gone.
It's like birth certificates for someone long dead. Yeah.
Cash for an economy long since gone to dust. So yeah, then she does her real not convincing flirtiness.
Yeah, she tries to form an alliance with Grendel, which, I mean, she kind of does, right? Because, it's the alliance that gets her killed. She's in Grendel's castle.
That's true. This is her
barrow.
Setting herself on a path towards Natron's barrow.
Yeah.
You're so stupid.
But yeah, that's she's trying to ally with Grendel and then betray her.
Yeah, and like Grendel is very clearly playing the game because she thinks it'll give her an edge against the other Forsaken. So it's totally a matter of like, I know that you know that I know that you know that I'm playing you kind of thing, which is fine. That's how the Forsaken do. But also we get the just really uncomfortable weirdness of the Lecher in a weird wannabe trans representation story that's failing, hitting on the sexy one of the Forsaken. And
right.
Like, how she goes along with it almost reminds me of how a lot of women go along with weird lecherous old men. And so it's just uncomfortable. And some of it's correct discomfort and some of it's not so correct, but it's all uncomfortable.
And she's talking about alliances. And so she says all the others have alliances, right? And so you've got Semirhage, Masana, and Demandred have been in alliance for a long time, pretty much the entire series.
Since before the war officially broke out. Like, they've always been in an alliance.
And for me, that always made sense when we find out that, like, basically Semirhage took the Shan-Chan continent, Masana took the main continent, and Demandred went over to Shara, right? They, like, split the world up that way.
Sure, yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, it's like a triumvirate.
Yeah. They're like, we each get a continent, right? Like, that's enough, and at least not fight each other until we've all taken over our respective continents. And then, of course, you've got Moradin and his two pets. And then that just leaves these two, Sindain and Aran'gar. Everybody else is dead.
Oh, yeah, I should point out Vuji's comment in chat. Yeah, this Aran'gar character does kind of seem like what TERFs claim trans women are.
Mm-hmm.
This very much feels like how J.K. Rowling would write this. You know? Like, it's that... This is the monster that people think is real.
Right. The man in a woman's body who's just out there to use their woman's body to still take advantage of other women.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, this is not real, and this is why, like, all the trans people I've talked to are like, this is not great. Some people are like, I still see some representation and I'll take what I can get because obviously, but like we're all in agreement that at least a few asterisks are needed to like unpack this. And it this feels like a justification of what all the TERFs say. And it's not. It's just Robert Jordan fumbling the ball because he was not running this by sensitivity readers because it was 2003 or whatever. There's also, this is a really good paragraph for understanding Aran'gar's experience throughout the series. Again, we've referenced this a lot. She no longer really remembered having been a man. In her memories, she wore the body she did now, which did make for a few oddities. Yet that body's influence had not changed everything. Her appetites had not altered, only broadened. Like, we've been leaning on that paragraph to explain her the whole, like, that's the best explanation we get. And again, it's like Robert Jordan was trying and failing.
Yeah, and you know, it's like it's hard without the 20 years of conversations we've had about this subject to nail it on your first try.
Sure, he was not exposing himself to the kinds of perspectives that did exist at the time because they were harder to find. And you know, there's also the element of like the Dark One is doing this as a cruel joke, which like could be seen as an out or could be seen as like a weird take on what being trans is, which again is not right. But yeah, he, you know, he's not around to be learning all these things. He's writing these books when he wrote them, and it's an attempt is being made.
And it's just not, yeah. And this person, you know, was just never trans, right? They never wanted to be in a different body. They were forced into a different body. They're adapting to it. But like, it's just not very good trans representation. No, like, even just on all the technicalities of it, much less on the, like, I'm just like, the whole moral, political, technically, it's just not very good representation of someone who's trans.
Even just,
yeah, it's just not what that is, right? Like,
yeah,
and it's someone who was forced into a different body and who's adapting to it to the best of their ability. And there's some weird soul magic going on too, where the soul adapts to the body, which is not real. Like, it's just not. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not. I have nothing else to say about it. It's just not. Like,
I mean, it does kind of sort of vibe with the, like, what RuPaul quote, like, you're born naked and the rest is drag, or like being gender fluid or not giving a flying fuck and just being like, whatever the packaging looks like to you, you can call me that. Like, there is a little bit of that, but like, it's mostly framed as a cruel joke. So,
yeah. And there's anything about this person, it's like, oh, her appetites had not altered, only broadened. It's like, have they, or are you just now accepting it because you're in a different body? Have your appetites always been more...
Has your egg been cracked?
Yeah, right? Like, that's what you have to wonder, right? Have you always been into men and women? You just didn't accept it, right? That's one thing I always want to ask.
Yeah, for sure. So it's, again, Robert Jordan's just showing his lack of exposure to perspectives outside of his silo, which is, you know, we're all doing our best. He read a lot, but it is impossible to read everything. So, you know, he chose to become an expert on horses instead of the trans experience, you know.
And swords and spears. Hey, you know.
We make our choices.
We do.
And then they get approached by the three, who I guess have just all compared notes on the White Tower situation, which has just gone down. Like, I'm assuming 48 hours at most away from Egwene getting captured.
Right. There's been one night of sleep.
Yeah, they've all just compared notes, and now they're all mad, and they want to come over and yell at Aran'gar for failing to prevent this from happening, because this is getting in the way of Masana's plans. And so we get a whole bunch of info dumping about how the Aes Sedai are all just marionettes for various Forsaken.
And because remember, Egwene went down to the docks. She didn't tell Masana. She didn't tell anybody. She just went, right? Masana was like trying to spend the night with her.
Aran'gar.
Not Masana, Aran'gar was trying to spend the night with her. And she was like, no, go chill. I want a night alone. And she was like, fuck, fine.
And that carelessness led to Egwene getting captured, which, you know, may or may not fuck up all their plans. Spoilers, Masana. She's going to fuck up more than just your plans.
Right. Well, and this is the whole, like, you know, they just underestimate her. It's still, they're like, Aran'gar's like, she's not the figurehead you think she is. And it's like, I don't really care. She's never going to fix the whole problem. Right? She's not good enough. Like, I just want her in place long enough to keep things separated and divided. She doesn't realize how strong Egwene is and how she can unite the party underneath her. She doesn't even think Egwene can keep the rebels united underneath her.
Right. I mean, just like Elaida, she assumes she can be broken, right? She says, I can wait to get her out until Elaida has broken her. Like, that's not going to happen because Egwene is the White Tower. She's going to break your mind before she breaks to Elaida, you know?
Right. Right.
She's like, I want the Aes Sedai hating each other. And it's like, well, sorry, but Egwene is not the figurehead you believe. They're not going to hate each other. They're going to fucking do a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and actually move forward like South Africa.
And I think Jordan goes a long way to saying, like, hey, this is why Egwene is getting all the chances she's getting. She is consistently underestimated. It's not that it's not that no one, you know, is worried about her or thinking about her. It's just that they don't think she's good enough to be a threat. And so they just, you know, push her down a little bit and say, oh yeah, she's a tool we can use later, not realizing it's a threat that they're just leaving behind on their doorstep.
Everyone from her maids through the Forsaken underestimating this woman. But yeah, it's amazing what you can do when people don't expect you to just have the audacity to do it. Yeah, Vuji, it is kind of weird that Aran'gar is one of the few people who's not underestimating her. It's a little ironic, but everyone underestimates Aran'gar. And rightly so. Everyone actually accurately estimates Aran'gar. Which is to say that Aran'gar has nothing important to say. And this one time, it's like a boy who cried wolf, right? Aran'gar's like always wrong. And this one time she's right, it's completely lost in the noise of all the times she was wrong. But she has spent a lot of time around Egwene and seen Egwene powering through some rough shit. I mean, fuck. Aran'gar has been turning psychic thumbscrews into Egwene's brain and watching Egwene just handle meetings, do her paperwork, be kind to her maids, like just powering through, living her life, being the fucking Amyrlin, learning from Swan, even while she is driving ice picks into this woman's brain, right? So she's been seeing that, witnessing that. Like, you can't help but start to gain a grudging respect when someone's just like ignoring the torture you're putting them through.
I suppose, yeah. Yeah, and hey, got her ready for all the spankings, right? She could deal with that, the excruciating headaches, right? Like, at least the headaches went away. Her butt hurts now, but honestly, I would rather have a butt on fire than a brain on fire.
Having had hormone-induced mini migraine headaches and also like a sprained ankle, or bad poison oak, or even like terrible period cramps, like, yeah, having it not be in your head is a fucking mercy. Like, the headaches, bad headaches, migraine headaches, like, there's just something so inescapable when it's in your face, when it's in your skull. Like, God, put it on an extremity, please. Yeah, so yeah, I guess if I had to pick between daily migraines or daily spankings, I guess I'd pick spankings. Right?
Yeah. It's not a fun choice.
But it's not in your head, which is like a big fucking plus. Moradin makes a dramatic entrance?
Yeah. I will decide when and where or whether she is freed, Moradin announced, right? Like, so he's got his hand personally on the pulse of Egwene.
He thinks.
And what's going on with her. He thinks. Right?
I don't think he has any fucking idea what he's talking about, even less than the rest of these fuckers.
Well, I think he has a slight clue more, but not. He becomes irrelevant very quickly. it's kind of funny how quickly Ishamael becomes irrelevant.
And also, Ishamael totally underestimated Egwene at the very beginning. Like, the girl who thinks she can protect you. Ha 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 ha. So silly. So, like, he's in the habit of writing Egwene off.
Totally.
To his detriment.
Right. Aran'gar's, what does he have on them? Yeah, it's a soul trap. You'll figure that out later.
Yeah, she literally figures it out in this chapter. Like, oh, there's a leash to pick up to these two, which I'm just like, ew, that would be awful.
Okay, so big question. Who's imitating Samael? Samael appears to have resurfaced, Moradin announced. And it's got to be one of the Forsaken because he's being obeyed. Myrddraal are obeying them. So which Forsaken is impersonating Samael to move troops and having them attack the manor, right? Because I think that's what the attack was.
Oh, I was wondering what all of these guys are being moved for. The attack on the manor house. Could it be Taim's entrance exam?
I don't think he'd be tricking Moradin.
He's not tricking Moradin. He's tricking a bunch of Myrddraal.
Let's see.
Is pretending to be Samael, like, his final ploy to gain the Dark One's attention and be, like, welcomed in? I don't think it's Aran'gar. That's the only person I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, no, obviously. Like, no, I'm looking through the Wheel of Time FAQ and trying to figure out. It's a pretty long FAQ. I'm going to tag this in here because I should have read this before we recorded, but I thought it'd be I thought we'd get a simpler answer than this, but it's actually pretty complicated. Taim is definitely one of the options.
Because it could be any of them, male or female, because Trollocs and Myrddraal wouldn't know the difference between male and female as long as it looks like Samael.
So, the article I posted certainly believes that Taim is the top candidate. I think it was Grendel.
That was going to be my second guess, was Grendel. It's the kind of thing she would do from Natron Sparrow. Mm-hmm. Like, just go on a day trip to pretend to be Samael.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I just don't have a clear answer, and nothing I read really says, oh, we have a quote from this, or we got a definitive answer on this.
Maybe we can ask the new generative AI model, and it can solve the problem for us. Heavy sarcasm, by the way, guys. I want to burn that thing with fire.
Yeah. Let's see. Sorry. I actually also, my computer's at 2%. Crap. I need to grab a charger. I'll be right back.
Because we're not recording this Zoom meeting. And if you die, then we have to do all this over again. Whew! The tension! The tension!
With 1% left, that really felt like, cut the red wire!
Yeah, that was like a video
wire.
game, final run situation. Like, oh, God.
My laptop was at 1% when I plugged that thing in.
We aren't doing a Zoom backup. Like, we've been fucked. We've been fucked.
No, that's right. Oh, no. Well, fortunately, again, because the software I use to record, even if it gets interrupted, it doesn't dump.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's encoding to the hard drive. So if you shut my computer right down, it would all be on the hard drive. You might miss like 5-10 seconds.
Oh, that's good to know. But still, please don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, I didn't start recording on Zoom, did I?
I didn't do it last week either.
Yeah.
We're just so rock solid.
Yeah, we never needed the backup.
Except for those times we did.
Not without a guest, I don't think.
Yeah. What were we talking about when you noticed that?
So who's imitating Samael?
Yeah, so it's either Taim being big fancy pants or Grendel being sneaky.
Some people think it might be Fane, because how else do you get that many Trollocs through the ways unless Fane's actually like imitating a Forsaken?
How would he disguise himself as a Forsaken?
Yeah, well, some Trollocs obey him, but those are the ones he corrupted, so I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah, I don't see how he would have the power to pull off a believable Forsaken.
I don't think it was either Saidin or Moghedien, because they're just under too tight control. They couldn't get away with it. Probably not Moradin, because, like, honestly, why would he bring it up then?
Right. He's going to waste all their energy on a thing he did himself. I think not.
Yeah. So that brings Grendel, but yeah, it's sort of like the argument is basically she's too smart to do it because it's obvious that he's dead, so why would she like set herself up to be discovered in that way? But I don't find that argument convincing against it.
No, it's just a one-off. All she needs to do is convince them to go, and then it's fine. And yeah, I don't think it would be Masana, because she's busy being sad over getting assaulted, and Demon Dread and Semirog are like very busy doing other shit.
Right.
They're barely keeping up with what's happened to Samael. They don't have time to remember to imitate him.
So then, then Taim. I think Taim or Grendel are your two real only candidates, but...
Yeah, but there's no good evidence solidly either way, so you can headcanon at will which one you want.
Right. So yeah, that's all I got.
All
right? Like I don't have any other, nothing definitive, nothing that I was able to really, pull out. There's a lot of speculation out there, but nothing I can find that's more definitive than that.
Moving on then to the seals. That's what I've got next.
Mm-hmm.
So basically at this point, the Dark believes that Rand still has the seals. So I think we should assume that Rand still has the seals in our omniscient reader perspective. Right? Does he still have them?
Yes, it's not entirely clear to me when they get stolen. The top theory I've read is that when Taim gave Rand a seal, he put some sort of tracker on it so that he could then at any time go find them. It's a little bit weird, like in canon, Demandred and Taim are heavily connected. So when Demandred says, I have my followers searching everywhere, but they found nothing. It's like, yeah, but isn't one of your followers Taim, and isn't he the one who has the tracker on it? So, I'm a little confused as to exactly why they haven't found the seals yet. And then eventually when they do, and whether or not that's just something that, Sanderson was like, well, that took place and I didn't write, it happened off screen and I don't really have a good way to put that into the timeline. So I'm just going to pretend, they were stolen at some point and move on and don't really explain it. But, it's one of those, at some point when Rand had them in his possession or in hiding, they were stolen and were replaced with fakes. And I think it's after this point.
I feel like all of this nonsense is the result of Tame and Dread. This would make a lot more sense if Tame and Dread had just been allowed to exist, because there's odd loose ends that are rippling out right here. And I think you're right. Sanderson didn't know how to make it fit, so he said, how sneaky they were? They had a plus 40 to their sneak check that was already a natural 20. So you didn't see it. Nobody saw it. It just happened for reasons. And it's unfortunate, but this at least gives us a timeline to say, well, it happened after this. But I like the idea that Tame gave Rand the thing with the tracker, always anticipating he was going to need to steal it back at some point. I like that idea.
Why else would he give it to him?
Totally.
Why else would he give it to him? Like, I know somewhat to earn his trust, but that's just shallow, right? Why not do two things? And do an inverted weave around it that no one else can detect that lets you know where it is at all times. And
we know that metal and stone take trackers the best. I assume that Heartstone qualifies as a stone when it comes to the longevity of a finder.
Yeah. And it was made out of metal, right? We know that iron is what Quendiar is generally made out of. So it was a metal that became stone. So yeah, totally should work in that. Oh, another line before that I want to talk about. She had no regrets that the true power was limited to his use alone. So that's just confirmation that the true power is now Nabliss only. Nobody else has access to it.
If it's an act done by the true power, it's an act done by the Nabliss.
Or Shadar Haran? Shadar Haran kind of exists with his own magic system. Because remember, he uses the staff to burn the ground and stuff, and he can teleport. But it's like, it's the Murdral set of powers.
Yeah, that's, he's a special thing.
And this is where the price was much too high. Ishmael had certainly been at least half insane, and he still was as Moradin. The way that follows makes it sound like insanity is the price that you pay.
Yeah. It's a different kind of insanity than the one power taint madness, but it's still insanity.
It's more of an addiction, delusions of grandeur insanity, rather than a, oh my God, there are voices in my head insanity.
Yeah, which it does seem like Logain is kind of experiencing that sort of insanity from his one power madness, the delusions of grandeur. But yeah, definitely, it's not the voices kind with the true power.
But that's also, I think, important when it comes to the last battle, right? Because the only way to get true power is through Moradin at this point, which means that's where Kalendor becomes so critical, is they have to use Kalendor to get the true power out of Moradin to actually recreate the prison without a patch.
So Moradin is directing them to find the seals for him. And Sindane says, give me loose Theron. I can torture the information out of him, I promise. And then Moradin says, yeah, sure. You're just going to kill him. I don't trust you as far as I can throw you.
Right, because this isn't Lanfear on Rand's side who wants to seduce him. This is a jilted lover who wants to kill him with every passion, torture and kill him because she has been rejected. She is not on Rand's side anymore. She wants him dead.
No, she is full hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned at this point.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She is a woman scorned in the most intensive ways. And then he says, well, if you want to kill someone, you can kill these two. And then he displays the holograms of Matt and Perrin, and Semirog, in a remarkable display of self-control, goes, interesting. After having seen Matt in the palace for all that time, she just, like, responds in the most blasé, like, offhanded kind of way. But inside, she is just, like, pounding her head against a wall. Like, you stupid fuck. Why couldn't you have told me that was Matt Cawthon before?
Wait, who are you saying is doing that? Grendel? Semirog?
Because she's a Noth. When she was in the Terrasen Palace, like that whole time that she was just watching Tylan's toy running around getting in the way and taking the eye of her charge, like she could have been doing so many things to him that whole time. Like when that hologram comes up and she's just like, maybe if you told us that before, they'd already be dead. Inside, she is screaming in frustration.
I missed that. That's a good one. Yeah, because she was totally hanging out with him the whole time.
Yeah, she's like, I cannot fucking believe the arrogance of this motherfucker right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly, Vucci. There's that Matt scene where the dice stop when he walks into the room and meets Tuon for the very first time. And there's a line to the effect of, he was expecting a Forsaken to jump out from the fireplace. And she is sitting right there next to the fireplace, and it's just like, and so here, finally, she is realizing the import of that meeting in a whole new light, and is just inside screaming, and on the outside, she's just like, oh, interesting.
I like Grendel's line here. Finding Ta'Veren was never as simple as you made it out, and now it's harder than ever. The whole pattern is in flux, full of shifts and spikes.
I liked that too.
Yeah, that was a really good world building. And also her whole, like, yes, it is possible to find Ta'Veren through, like, significant events, but it's hard. Like, you have to know what's going on all across the world and find significant shifts in the pattern.
I love the fourth wall breaking of that, because we've spent this whole series assuming that any Forsaken can find any Ta'Veren at any time. And here we have this character saying, like, reader, it was never as simple as the big scariness in book one made you think it was. You know, we're actually far more incompetent than you thought we were. Like, it just feels very fourth wall thinning, and I love it.
Well, I mean, it was the whole point of Fane, right? Is like, it wasn't easy to find Ta'Veren. He like kind of knew the general area they might be in, but Fane wasn't the only one he sent out. He sent out a bunch of Tinkers and Wanderers looking for signs, and then he distilled them and searched through it. Like, you know, there's a ton of stuff where he's like, I don't know where these, they're not really that Ta'Veren, I suppose, at that time, but yeah, it's not a simple thing to find Ta'Veren, even though Moradin is often like, just find them. They're Ta'Veren. It's easy. They're just Ta'Veren. It's fine. Right.
It's like asking someone to, like, just find the irregularities in the accounting of Purdue Pharma. Like, I mean, they're there, but like, how are you going to find it through all the fucking noise? Like, do I look like I have all the time in the world? No.
That's what pocket dimensions are for.
Right. Very much so. Very much so. God, we need pocket dimensions so we can read all the books. Like, Hot Nuance, our episode with Kay Elliott came out, and the reading list in the show notes is so long. The list of authors that she mentioned is so freaking long, because I put every single author and title in the show notes, so that way, you know, people with short-term memory wouldn't have to worry about that. And, like, it was a project to get all those. It was so many. And it's like, how am I supposed to catch up on all these without a pocket dimension? I need a pocket dimension. We all need these. We deserve these.
There was there's a classic sci-fi book, and maybe someone will remember. I can't narrow it down. And there's these twins, and they find a hut. They inherit this old house, and they find a hut up in the hills, and it turns out the time moves faster in the hut. And the one kid They're twins, and like, but the one's like a few minutes older, and he always bullies him. So he's like, fine, I'll be older. I'm gonna go. Sorry, time moves slower in the hut, I should say. So he goes and spends basically 12 hours in the hut, which is a full year. So he like takes a bunch of supplies with him and like lives in the hut for a full year. So he comes out a year older than his brother. And then there's something coming through the rift. There's like a rift, right? And this thing keeps getting closer and closer and closer. And it turns out it comes out the next morning, and it was there to close the rift. And it's just a machine that closes the rift and then eats itself. And like, yeah. And it's like the whole book is about this kid who just like has a year to live by himself in a hut with books. And he like gets in shape because all he can do is work out and read. And I'm just like, part of me reading that as a kid, like that, I was like, just absolute dream. Like just a year to myself, where I don't have to go anywhere and do anything and talk to anybody, and I can just hang out and read all I want and play all the video games and get in shape. And then the pandemic hit. And I discovered the realities of getting to do exactly that. It's not quite all it was chalked up to be.
Right. There are some unexpected pitfalls.
Yeah. Just one or two. No, I remember, especially in that book, there's a whole scene where he's like, he realized he could go for 4 15-minute runs and still make his like deadline, but they would have to be basically, because he's in there for a whole year. It's like every season he gets to go for 1 15-minute run. That's the only time he can leave the hut.
Oh, wow.
And he like plans it all out ahead of time and where he's going to run and like looking up at the stars. And he's like, oh my God, everything's moving so quick. Because also he's been looking out the door and like he can watch a bird just freeze in air, right? Because time has basically stopped. Really, yeah, fun written. There was a whole series of books where he wrote. There was one about a bunch of aliens playing a board game, and they're like vacation. The kids are vacationing at the beach, and he goes plays the board game with his neighbors, and the neighbors turn out to be a bunch of aliens playing the board game for like high stakes for planets, right? Like, and he ends up being the person who's playing for Earth on an intergalactic, stakes board game.
Oh, the whole fate of the world is riding on this game. Oh,
yes, yeah.
That's amazing. I love it.
And so, I mean, and these books are one of those, like, it was like, not R.L. Stine, but, like, he wrote 5 or 6 of these books they're unrelated. They're just a bunch of sci-fi novels, single concept novels, but same series. And someone out there knows what I'm talking about.
Send us an email. Let us know.
I cannot remember. Yeah, send us an email. Yeah. I might do some Googling and see if I can find a link for... any other Forsaken secrets to talk about here? I don't really think there was... Aginor is just not the smartest Forsaken, so a lot of times she's saying things we've known for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have anything else that's that was very, very fun and juicy, and we've been leaning on this chapter a lot, and it was fun to get to finally go through it. But
it was fun.
Yeah, Aginor is not the sharpest knife in the shed, so
No. I guess I'll read us out. Or do you want to do that?
No. We have expectations now.
Well, the problem is there's like a whole bunch of different voices here at the end, right? So I'm going to have to do a Grendel and a Moradin and an Aginor.
Well,
Aran'gar.
You've got yourself into this situation. You can get yourself out of it.
All right.
I believe in you.
Moradin straightened himself in his chair, directing that stare at the rest of them. That goes for all of you. Althor is mine. You will not harm him in any way. Sindain bent her head over her goblet, sipping, but the hatred in her eyes was plain. Grendel had said she was not Lanfear, that she was weaker in the One Power, but she surely was fixated on Althor, and called him by the same name Lanfear had always used. If you want to kill somebody, he went on, kill these 2. Suddenly, the semblance of 2 young men in rough country clothes stood in the center of the circle, turning so that everyone could get a good look at their faces. One was tall and wide, with yellow eyes of all things, while the other was not quite slender and wore a cheeky grin. Creations of Tel'aran'rhiod, they moved stiffly, and their expressions never altered. Perrin Barra and Matt Cawthon are Ta'veren, easily found. Find them and kill them. Grendel laughed, a mirthless sound. Finding Ta'veren was never as simple as you made it out, and it's now harder than ever. The whole pattern is in flux, full of shifts and spikes. Perrin Ibarra and Matt Cawthon, Semrog murmured, inspecting the two shapes. So that is what they look like. Who knows, Morden? If you had shared this with us before now, they might have already been dead. Morden's fist came down hard on the arm of his chair. Find them. Make doubly sure that your followers know their faces. Find Ibarra and Cawthon and kill them. The time is coming, and they must be dead. Aran'gar took a sip of her wine. She had no objections to killing these two if she happened to come across them, but Morden was going to be terribly disappointed over Randall Thor.
Awesome. That was fantastic.
That's the switching of voices. Every time I do this, though, I have more respect for Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, because, like, if I were to actually do a reading like this, I would have to do so much prep work to make sure I got the voices right and consistent. Mm-hmm. Like, doing that was so difficult, because I can do a fun voice for a few minutes once.
Right, yeah.
But, like, giving a voice to a character and maintaining that and maintaining the voice over the course of a whole novel feels almost impossible to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, the amount of time that Gus spends fumbling around for what is my voice for this and that character on Wheel Takes, because he's committed to doing a full cast of characters, is, like, it's real. It's real. It's, yeah, it's a fun little thing to do until you think about, like, the scale at which you'd have to do it seriously. It's like, oh, God.
And huge shout out to Pants, who found the book I was talking about. William Slater wrote Singularity.
Nice.
I also remember The Boy Who Reversed Himself. That's great. It's about a kid who figures out a doorway into the fourth dimension, goes up into the fourth dimension, flips over in the fourth dimension, and then comes back to the third dimension flipped. His left is on his right, and his right is on his left. And he, like, has trouble going through doors and shit because every time he turns left, he turns right instead.
That sounds complicated.
Right, like, I mean, just crazy. God, The Boy Who Couldn't Die, I didn't read that. Interstellar Pig, that was the one I was talking about with the board games. The game was called The Interstellar Pig. There's a bunch on here that I haven't read. Last Universe. Ooh, I might have to go on a binge read.
This will be in show notes for everyone. Don't worry, you don't have to write it down. I'm going to write it down for you.
Stranger Attractions. Oh, some of these very interesting titles. Very interesting titles. The Duplicate. I read that one. I remember that one. All right, that's it. Oh, there's an Interstellar Pig number 2? The Parasite Pig? Oh, okay. Okay. I know what I'm doing this week. I got some reading to do. I did not know about all these novels.
Nice.
Oh, good. Glad Super Skylake. City of Golden Shadow. Great book. Yeah. What did you think about the first one? Right, because that's the second one in the series, right? Oh, that's the first one. Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, it's been a while. I don't remember the books as well, but yeah, I did go off about those a couple of weeks ago, didn't I?
You do that.
Oh, yeah, Pants. So sorry. I need to correct this. So last week I talked about the fragile threads of power, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm getting into it. Feels like, yeah, there's a lot of flashbacks and a lot of character. It's the second. She's already written a whole first series with these characters. This is the second series with those characters. So I just went back and read the first one, so I read, I think, Threads of Power, which is the first series, and then you've got Fragile Threads of Power. You think these are prequels? I didn't think so. I thought based on reading the first one, you actually get introduced to the characters properly in the one I just read, right? I'm like, oh, this is... But unfortunately, having read, like, The Fragile Threads of Power, I know exactly what's coming in this first book. So I'm like, okay, I know. Like, they've told me all in flashback and recap everything that happened in the first series. I was like, this is a really deep backstory on these characters. It really feels like being thrown in halfway into the series.
I had that happen to me when I was reading Tamora Pierce quartets. I went straight from Alana to Kel, and I skipped Dane somehow. So then I went back and read Dane. I like knew a bunch of her story because I picked it up from context clues with Kel. It's just like, this is not the order they were supposed to be read in, but whatever. That's the nice thing about standalone quartets in the same universe. You don't have to read them in order. It helps, but you don't have to.
Right. It helps. Yeah. Yeah. These definitely should be. But yeah, Pants, I will say, these have not turned out to be my absolute, like, I wouldn't say they're the best written favorite books. They're very fluffy, light. Honestly, the reason I liked Fragile Threads of Power so much because it was read by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, and I just love listening to their voices. So the first book in the first series was narrated by somebody else, and it did not have the charm of a book read by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, because it turns out I'm a sucker for those two.
Sure. From that, I do want to transition to plug the Hot Nuance Book Club. Again, we just released our episode with Kate Elliott this last week, and there's a lot of references to a zillion different authors and good books and good recommendations in that utterly delightful 2-hour conversation that we had. It just came out yesterday, and it's been doing very well. We've gotten great feedback on it.
Excellent. Tell me about it. Like, because how was Kate Elliott, right? Like, to talk to as an author.
She was great. She was really fun. She was exactly as scatterbrained as me, Bree, and Allie. So you can imagine the chaos that edit was between all four of us. She had some wild stories from like early days conventioning and like how things have changed with convention space and like early internet versus now internet. Weird sexism that she had to deal with and like the things she wouldn't go back to, the friendships that she made. Like there was a bunch of personal stories, a bunch of industry like insight. I learned a lot about publishing, you know, because like I've never read romance, and most of the authors that she talked about I hadn't heard of. I'd heard of some, but like it was a lot of peeks into worlds I just really didn't know about. But her and Bree have talked a lot about this kind of stuff, so they had good rapport. It was really fun. It was really fun. And it was early morning for her because she's in Hawaii. So she was like caffeinated, you know, like having her morning coffee and like the morning sun coming through the window. 2 hours flew by so fast. And then, this coming week, we are going to be releasing our first episode of Alana. So, you know, if any of you read Alana, definitely come on over and check that out. Just have to plug that because I'm really excited about it, and we're recording our second episode tomorrow. So,
really? Because I'm not working.
I still need to ask them if we're going to allow a boy into the club for a house for a day.
Okay. I promise to be good.
Yeah, I've also still don't have a website to point you all to check out my other podcast work, but I will someday. Someday
soon. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?